art and science of happiness. Is there an answer to that? Do you really want to be happy? And how can you be happy? Well, there is a book in the market which talks about how you can be happy, and the title of the book is Build the Life You Want, and it has been authored by Arthur C. Brooks and Oprah Winfrey. We are being joined by Arthur. Thank you so much for your time here on NDTV, Arthur. My first question is about this collaboration. How did this collaboration really come about, and what unique perspective did Oprah Winfrey herself bring to this project?
I've been writing about happiness for a long time, and I write a column in The Atlantic, which is a magazine in the United States. And I don't know who reads it all the time because I have about 500,000 readers a week. It turns out that one of my readers, my regular readers, was Oprah Winfrey. When my last book came out, she read it on the first day and called me, asked if I was interested in collaborating. And of course I was. She was an iconic figure. She's one of the most important people in American culture and around the world, as a matter of fact. And she said that she believed that if we kind of joined forces, we might be able to touch a lot more people with the science of happiness. So the collaboration idea for this book was Oprah Winfrey's idea. And I gave the easiest answer of my life by simply saying yes.
You have in your book emphasized upon what is seen as actionable step to achieve happiness. So let's talk about one of those. In that, what role does personal reflection in particular play? Because, your book talks about several individuals, their stories, their secrets. So what role does personal reflection, according to you, plays, in living the life one wants, according to this book?
Individual reflection is absolutely critical. A life on which one does not reflect is one in which one can't make progress. That's a simple fact. That's a fact in every religious tradition. But it's also a fact that we know from both neuroscience and social psychology. So we talk a lot in this book about a technique called metacognition. Metacognition is awareness of your own thinking through personal reflection. Your emotions are produced in a part of the brain called the limbic system. Your decisions come from a part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is a much newer, much more evolved part of the brain. And only through personal reflection can you move the experience of your emotions from the ancient part of your brain where they're produced to the newer part of the brain where you can decide what they mean and how to use them. Now, there's many ways to do this. Prayers of petition are a form of personal reflection. Meditation is a form of reflection. I've studied meditation in India off and on throughout my entire adult life. India, by the way, is my absolute favorite place to go because I have so many teachers there on personal reflection, and I've learned so very much. Metacognition is a scientific technique. To practice it is very often a spiritual technique.
So if it is about individual reflection, let's expand that a little and talk about importance of relationships then. What advice would you offer for cultivating meaningful relationships, and how do you understand that relationship has become meaningful and it is meaningful enough for an individual to achieve happiness?
So relationships are the essence of being in communion with others, which is the practice of love. Love is not a feeling. Most young people today believe that love is an emotion, but it isn't. To love is a commitment to will the good of the other. And there's many different kinds of love, but what we know based on the science is that you can't be a happy person unless you have a lot of love in your life. The kinds of love that we need to practice every day are love of the divine through our spiritual practice, love of our families, love of our friends, and that means real friendships and not just transactional deal friendships, and love that we express toward everybody in the way that we do our daily work in serving the rest of humanity. So it's faith, family, friends, and work that serves other people, or the kind of love that links us to other people. So through metacognition and personal reflection, we understand ourselves, and then we practice it through our spiritual practices in communion with other people. That's why love really is happiness.
Arthur, if love is happiness, and you have spoken about your journey to India, your teachers, your gurus are here in India. What is that quest that brings, that in fact I should say brought you to India in particular, and that is happiness in some way connected to spirituality then?
India is an ancient culture that has thought through many of the problems that seem much newer in the West. So the result of that is that I've learned an awful lot about myself by talking to people that are as part of a culture that has existed for a lot longer than mine. I've studied with a teacher in Palakkad in southern India named Sri Nochur Venkataraman, he's obviously Tamil, but he speaks perfect English, which is helpful to me. And he's taught me, for example, about setting my life up according to the ashramas, an ancient Vedic notion of the perfect life in 4 quarters. The first is brahmacharya, the student phase, and then grihastha, the householder phase. But now I'm on the brink of becoming 60 years old, which means I'm starting a phase of my life called vanaprastha. That comes from these 2 Sanskrit words, to retire into the forest. And in other words, to step back more from my daily earthly activities and more into contemplation, to deepen my spiritual knowledge and deepen my relationships, and to be more of a teacher, such that, of course, the last quarter of my life should be sannyasa, where I can be basking in the enlightenment of the Godhead. But to do that, I have to do a lot of work. I have to do a lot of studies. And that's one of the examples of the things that I learned when I come to the subcontinent, full of its spiritual riches.
One interesting aspect of your book is that it combines insights from various disciplines, not just spiritual aspects about which you talk, in the context of India. There is science, philosophy, and personal anecdotes as well. How do all these, in fact, interplay in your approach to building a fulfilling life?
These things are related to each other. And one of the problems that we have in intellectual life is that people who are spiritual tend not to be scientific, and people who are scientists tend not to be spiritual. That's a big problem. And the reason is because a full intellectual and spiritual understanding of the truths of life requires that we follow both approaches. God is the frame around the creation, and the creation can be understood through science. And that's the reason that we have to truly understand both. For a person to become happier, to have a better life, you need to understand the science and the workings. Then you need to change your habits, and in so doing, understand the spiritual context in which you're doing the work, and you teach it to other people. In other words, it's profoundly unintellectual and incomplete to study science without spirituality, or spirituality without science. I believe that you need both, and that's why I practice both in my life and work.
So in today's fast-paced, technology-driven, chat GPT and AI-driven world, what tips would you give for maintaining focus on personal and individual growth then?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's very easy to become distracted. Technology has always promised us happiness, and it's never delivered. And the reason it's never delivered is because it can't deliver. Right now, what everybody is telling us is that AI will solve all of our problems. It's not going to solve any of our important problems. The important problems in our life are complex problems of love, and technological engineering solutions can't solve those problems. Another similar issue is when social media told us it was going to make us less lonely, but it made us more lonely. Why? Because it distracted us from the real relationships that we have with God, with others, with friends, with family. How did it distract us? By pulling us away from the real world. The important thing for us to understand is that we live in a modern technological world, and it's done so much good. Our countries are much richer than they've been in the past. We have less poverty and less hunger and fewer preventable diseases. These are all great blessings, but the spiritual realities haven't changed. Everybody who's watching and listening to us right now has to remember that you are going to live in a modern world, but don't be distracted by the modern world. Start each day in prayer. Start each day in meditation. Make sure that you frame each day with the spiritual truths that were here 6,000 years ago and will be here 6,000 years from now, no matter what the technology is at that time.
So if AI can't make us happy, technology cannot make us happy, then what exactly are we fighting for to achieve in this world as a whole? I mean, as mankind?
what technology and prosperity and capitalism and all of these systems can do is that they can eliminate many of the sources of unhappiness in our life. We go at these things in the wrong way. Many people believe that happiness and unhappiness are opposites, and that happiness is the absence of unhappiness, but that isn't true. They're different forces. Happiness comes from the bliss of faith and family and friends and meaningful work. Unhappiness comes from the miseries that we might be able to avoid each day. The miseries that come from the pressures of money and health and all of these particular problems. And those are the problems that technology might be able to solve. We shouldn't look to them for happiness, but we should keep improving the world, lifting people up with more education and more opportunity such that we can eliminate some of the sources of unhappiness, and then they can do the personal work required to get more life satisfaction and happiness in their lives.
Yes, of course, this is one of many books that you have written in the domain of happiness and quest for well-being. How does Will the Life You Want? How is this book different from others, and what made you take this path of happiness and send that message that you can play that role of making the world a happy place?
So each one of us has a journey in our lives. Each one of our lives is an enterprise, really an adventure. And we're called on, we have a responsibility to answer the question, why am I alive? For what would I be willing to die? And most people don't answer these questions. They don't have answers to the questions, why am I alive? I've done a lot of different things in my life. The first time I came to India, I was a musician when I was 19 years old. That was a long time ago, as a matter of fact. I've been coming to India my entire life. And I've done a lot of different things. I mean, I got my doctorate. I became a social scientist. I was a professor. Then I was a CEO for a long time. And it was a wonderful life, I have to tell you. But when I was in my mid-50s, I realized that I had some decades left and I wanted to use them for the good of mankind. And I wrote a mission statement for myself when I was 55. And by the way, this is my vanaprastha. I'm going to spend the rest of my life lifting people up and bringing them together in bonds of happiness and love using science and ideas and spirituality. That's what I'm going to do. And so I had to find a way to do it. Now, I have a PhD. I'm a social scientist. I teach neuroscience and all of these things. And so how am I going to do that? Well, probably by teaching at a university and writing books about science for ordinary people. And so I took a professorship at Harvard University and began to write a column in my books to try to share these ideas with the world. When I have an alliance with somebody as famous as Oprah Winfrey, it gives me an opportunity to write a basic book like Build the Life You Want, which is the basic science that anybody can use. And now the book is being distributed in my favorite place, which is India. What a privilege it is to actually be able to live my mission of love and hope and spirituality for the world.
Arthur, what do you hope readers should take away from this book? What should be the big takeaway for them?
I want readers to know that they can be happier. Not perfectly happy. Happiness is a direction, not a destination. On this earth, while we're living this life of struggle, we'll never be perfectly happy because we have negative emotions and negative experiences. But we can get happier. What I'm trying to get across, and Oprah is trying to get across with me in this book, is that each person can take more control of their lives using science and ideas and the techniques and concepts that actually come from our spiritual lives and putting them into serious practice. Because your life is a serious business, you can get happier. You can change your habits. And then just as excitingly, you can share these ideas and become a happiness teacher for other people as well.
And what is the most surprising discovery you made while researching and writing this book?
I've had a lot of surprises. This book and over my whole career as a scientist. I think the biggest mistake I used to make was I thought that Mother Nature wanted me to be happy. I thought that if I did all the things that I wanted to do naturally, if I followed my urges, that I would get happier. You know, back in the 60s, the hippies used to say, if it feels good, do it. And it made me think that there was a natural tendency to be happy. I've learned as a scientist that that's wrong. Mother Nature doesn't care if you're happy. Mother Nature only wants you to survive and pass on your genes. That's the animal path to life. The biggest surprise that opened my eyes was that there's an animal path of nature and a divine path of humanity. And I can choose the divine path, sometimes by doing the opposite of what Mother Nature wants, to deny myself the comforts of the nice warm bed, to get up an hour and a half before sunrise, which is a beautiful phrase in Sanskrit. It's called a Brahma Muhurta, which means the creator's time, when it's still dark, to avail myself of the discomforts that actually come. And that was shocking to me, that Mother Nature didn't care if I was happy. But when I realized that, my life really changed a lot.
Okay, let me sum this up with a question that is on my mind. How should I be happy? And what should I do to be happy?
You can't be perfectly happy, but you can be happier. The way to think about it is as a lifelong project. That lifelong project is one of enjoying your life, taking satisfaction in your accomplishments, and looking for the meaning of your existence. And the way for you to do that as easily as possible is to focus on 4 things every day and to practice 4 things every day. Practice your faith with seriousness. Take care of your family and love them. Build real friendships, not just business transactions. And dedicate your work to lifting other people up and serving the world. With these practices every day of faith, family, friends, and work, you can be happier.
Thank you so much for your time. Arthur Brooks there talking about how can an individual be happy. We certainly, laud the efforts that you're making to make this world a better place. Thanks so much for watching.